Jesus began to preach this message: "Turn back to God, the kingdom of heaven is near." While Jesus was walking along the shores of Lake Galilee, he saw two brothers. One was Simon, also known as Peter, and the other was Andrew. They were fishermen, and they were casting their net into the lake. Jesus said to them, "Follow me. I will teach you how to bring in people instead of fish." So the two brothers dropped their nets and followed him. Jesus walked on until he saw James and John, the sons of Zebedee. They were in a boat with their father, mending their nets. Jesus asked them to come with him. At once they left the boat and their father and followed Jesus.
Thanks, Justin. I'm always interested in hearing stories from MCCers as to how they ended up here or where they're at in their Christian faith. And from time to time we hear some of those stories from the front as people have been invited to share. And in fact we heard two people's stories just a few weeks ago. And I hear lots of stories as I just share with people over a coffee. I hear lots of stories. One of the common themes in these stories is something like, I'd been a Christian for years, just accepting what I'd been taught, and then for various reasons things started to unravel. And the Christianity that I'd embraced for all those years suddenly didn't work any longer. The ground shifted, and it felt like the foundation of my faith that had always seemed so solid just started crumbling. For some, it was a difficult or traumatic personal experience that blew apart how they understood God and the way that God worked in the world. For some, it was the challenge of trying to reconcile their sexuality or gender identity with the teaching of their church. For others, it was the response of the church or church leaders to a situation or even to them that left them just floundering. If that's been your experience, then you're not alone. It's a common theme in this congregation. The church, at least in the Western world, has been in decline for several decades. People are leaving the church in large numbers, and many are not just leaving the institutional church, the Sunday services where everybody shows up and sings songs, they're also leaving their faith. And here are the stats on that. You can't read them, they're a little small, but this is from the ABS statistics, Australian Bureau of Statistics. And you can see the top line there is a decline in Christian affiliation. The very bottom line is the increase in other religions, which is mostly due to immigration. You see the middle line there, the orangey line, is that is the no religion line. And along the bottom there are the years. Interestingly, it's been declining since the 70s. Around 2010, 2011, there was a point where that began an even steeper decline. And the no religion category showed a corresponding increase to Christianity's decrease. People are deconstructing. They're looking at the pieces of their faith which used to fit together so nicely and neatly, and they're wondering now if anything can be salvaged. Because the version of Christianity that they've been brought up with, or perhaps discovered in their earlier years, the Christianity that's dominated for the last few decades, is not working anymore. Some are leaving because the Christian system that they grew up in it doesn't make intellectual sense anymore. Christianity's been pitted against science, and the impression given is that, you have to pick one or the other because Christianity and science are incompatible. And a very narrow and literalistic approach to the Bible, with no consideration that there are maybe some different literary genres in the Bible, gives rise to ridiculous questions like, well, how did Noah look after the 2 mosquitoes on the ark? And, when God stopped the sun in the sky to give Joshua and his army more time to win the battle, what are the physics around that? Like how did God make that happen? So there's this intellectual dissonance. Some people are leaving because of the scandals that they hear in the church that just keep rolling on and on. Institutional child sexual abuse, the church's treatment of LGBTQ plus people, financial mismanagement, moral failure of religious leaders, the church's treatment of LGBTQ plus people. Incidents we hear of where religious leaders failed to take rape allegations, sexual harassment and domestic violence seriously. And did I mention the church's treatment of LGBTQ plus people? That's a major reason why young people say they are leaving the institutional church. They don't understand. Of course, we know these terrible things don't just happen in the church, they happen in other institutions as well. But aren't Christians supposed to be transformed by the Holy Spirit? Brian McLaren says, if we want to argue that Christianity has great power to transform people, we might wish that the actual data was a little more encouraging. Some leave because it seems to them that Christianity has become entangled with an ugly culture war, often linked to partisan politics, to such an extent that Christianity is wedded to one side or the other. On one side, Christianity seems to be reduced to these strong, rigid stands without any nuance on various moral issues. On the other side, Christianity seems to be reduced to nothing more than social justice. And of course, this is overly simplistic, what I'm saying. There are lots of Christians and lots of great churches that avoid getting caught up in these toxic culture wars. Nonetheless, that's what we sometimes see. At least in the Protestant branch of the church, Christianity has too often been understood as not really much more than a belief system that you sign up to. There's a checklist of what you have to believe, as in agree intellectually to be a Christian, and if you can check all of those off, you're in. It is a bold and unsettling claim that I'm about to make, but I'm going to make it. The Christianity that's been presented to us since the 1950s is failing us, and it's failing our society. It is time that we re-evaluated, reconsidered, reassessed, re-examined it in order to make some inroads into understanding just what is the Christian faith. And we need to re-evaluate it in the context of our time and our place, our culture, our generations. What is at the heart of the Christian faith? Is it a political or cultural stance? Is it adherence to moral standards? Is it social justice? Is it a set of beliefs to subscribe to? We need something new. We need something new that's grounded in something old. A fresh look at what the ancient Christian faith is. And it seems to me that the place to start is a fresh look at what Jesus said. A fresh look at what Jesus asked his followers to do. Did you hear that? To do. Not believe, to do. I like what Brian McLaren has to say in his book, Do I Stay Christian? I sometimes see Christianity as a huge ship capable of amazing voyages. It has tall masts and white sails, a strong hull, a deep keel and a powerful rudder. But it's going nowhere because its anchor is so heavy that its crew cannot pull it up. By reducing its mysteries to beliefs, by codifying these beliefs into systems and by defining itself by those belief systems, it has rendered itself a paradox, a ship that floats but doesn't sail. McLaren goes on to say, why can't we admit that focusing on getting our words and beliefs right has not succeeded in helping us be good? Why are we more loyal to the heavy, rusting anchor than to the call of adventure? And he asks us to imagine a Christianity that instead of deploying belief teachers into the world to recruit members and then belief police to ensure that those beliefs stay pure and correct, it deploys people whose quest is to follow the teaching and example of Jesus. What would that Christianity look like? What would that Christianity feel like? What would that Christianity sound like? At the heart of Christianity is a call to follow Jesus. That's the call to adventure. That's the call to discover what a human being could look like at its best, at its most authentic. And each generation, every era, their expertise without expecting something in return. Is it possible to give both freely and wisely at the same time? And where is the balance in that? That's what a big year is about. It's not about learning or even exploring a Christian belief system. It's not about debating doctrinal positions or debating which political positions align with Christianity. It's not about working out inconsistencies in the Bible or in our theologies. I'm not saying there's not a time and a place for that, but a big year isn't it. A big year is about practicing the teachings of Jesus in the hope that if we just keep on practicing, we might find ourselves getting better at following Jesus. We might be able to figure out how to follow Jesus in this crazy, messed up world that we live in. I am 100% certain that this world needs people who follow Jesus, who are working out through trial and error, through long experience and growing maturity, how to follow Jesus' teaching. This world needs Christians who will defiantly and courageously, firmly and graciously insist on loving their neighbour and their enemies, practicing hospitality, forgiving when it's hard, risking trusting God, and taking the log out of their own eyes before attempting to remove the speck from someone else's. That's why, if you do a big year, and if you're new to this church, if this is your first time, you might not know what I'm talking about. We're talking about our year's program that we're going to be doing in our small groups in place, but simply by hearing what Jesus said and trying to do it. Just practice. I wonder, if you do that, whether putting all of those pieces back together in one nice, neat picture might become a little less important. Maybe you'll open that drawer someday down the track. Maybe you'll find they've put themselves back together and they've made a completely different and new and surprising picture. So, a big year. I invite you into that.